A fresh wave of Iranian missile strikes hit central Israel overnight, with Tel Aviv bearing the brunt of the latest escalation in a war that is now pulling in not only Israel and Iran, but also the United States and key actors across the Gulf. Air raid sirens wailed across the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, the Dan region, the Sharon area, and parts of the West Bank as Israeli authorities warn residents of incoming projectiles. By morning, emergency crews were moving through shattered streets, broken storefronts, and damaged apartment blocks while investigators worked to assess impact sites and search for anyone who might still be trapped beneath the debris. Reuters and other outlets reported that one of the strikes in Tel Aviv involved a warhead of roughly 100 kilograms, or about 220 pounds, making the blast especially destructive in a dense urban area. Emergency officials said at least 6 people were wounded across 4 separate impact zones in Tel Aviv. Though the blast damage was extensive, first responders said they did not find fatalities in the affected buildings. Cars were crushed, one vehicle was overturned, and residential fades were blown open by the force of the explosion. Glass and debris covered the surrounding streets while smoke rose over central parts of the city. The attack was one of several barrages launched overnight, according to current reporting, underscoring how rapidly the confrontation has intensified and how difficult it has become for Israeli defenses to prevent all incoming fire from reaching populated areas. The visual aftermath in Tel Aviv pointed to the familiar pattern of modern urban warfare. The missile itself is only part of the damage, while the shockwaves, shattered glass, flying metal, and collapsing masonry often leave entire blocks looking as if they had been hit by multiple strikes. Police cordoned off the affected streets while rescue teams and municipal crews pushed through heaps of rubble and damaged vehicles. Authorities also reported missile fragments east of Tel Aviv, adding to fears that the danger zone was wider than the direct impact points alone. Israeli emergency responders moved quickly through the damaged neighborhoods, and officials credited coordinated work among rescue services, police, and military emergency units for helping prevent a higher death toll. Megan David Adam, widely known as MDA, is the country's national emergency medical, disaster, ambulance, and blood service organization, and it has been central to Israel's emergency response during the current war. Its official site identifies it as the National Emergency Service, matching the role described in the video narration. In Jerusalem, alarms also disrupted activity inside Israel's parliament. A Knesset spokesperson told CNN, according to the transcript, that a late-night parliamentary session was suspended after an alert from the Home Front Command and then resumed about 15 minutes later. Current wire reports similarly state that a missile aimed toward Jerusalem triggered protective action in and around the Knesset, though there were no immediate reports of injuries there. The incident showed how the latest round of attacks has expanded beyond commercial and residential districts to symbolic political targets and national institutions. The military significance of the latest barrage goes beyond the immediate damage. Reuters reported days earlier that Iran's missile campaign has included cluster munitions, creating an additional challenge for Israeli air defenses because such missiles must be intercepted before they disperse submunitions. The newer Tel Aviv strike, described by current reporting, appears to have involved a large unitary warhead rather than a cluster payload, signaling either tactical variation or deliberate targeting for maximum blast impact in city streets. Security analysts quoted by major outlets have suggested that Tehran is mixing different weapons types to test Israeli interception systems, strain civil defense responses, and maintain psychological pressure across a broad geographic front. At the same time, the political messaging surrounding the attacks has become almost as consequential as the military action itself. President Donald Trump said the United States would temporarily hold off on strikes against Iranian power infrastructure for 5 days, arguing that recent contacts suggested diplomacy might still be possible. The White House confirms that Donald Trump is the current U.S. president, so that title should be used in any up-to-date rendering of his remarks. Reports from Reuters, AP, and the Washington Post all say Trump presented the pause as a chance to test whether a broader agreement could be reached, even as combat continued. In remarks carried in the transcript, Trump described the delay as part of a calculation to see whether negotiations might gain traction after days of escalating conflict. One of the key lines that should be preserved appears in his own words. President Donald Trump said earlier, based on preliminary conversations between the United States and Iran over the past 2 days, I've directed the Department of War to temporarily postpone planned strikes against major energy and electricity targets in Iran. That statement captures the Central American claim that there had been enough contact to justify pausing a major next phase of U.S. military action. Reuters and AP both reported that Trump publicly tied the pause to what he described as productive or promising conversations. He also framed the pause as leverage rather than retreat, signaling that the threat of force remained very much alive. Another key line preserved from the remarks is President Donald Trump said, "We're giving it 5 days and then we're going to see where that takes us." In context, the statement was less a peace declaration than a deadline-backed warning, with Trump suggesting that if diplomacy failed, the United States could still resume attacks on Iranian infrastructure. Yet Tehran moved quickly to reject the premise of those comments. Iranian officials denied that negotiations with the United States were underway, and Reuters reported that Iran's parliament speaker dismissed the suggestion as fake news. The contradiction matters because it exposes a widening credibility gap between Washington's public posture and Tehran's. If one side says talks are active and the other says no talks exist, then any diplomatic opening appears fragile at best and performative at worst. One of the most important lines from the Iranian response should therefore remain untouched. Iran's parliament speaker said, "Absolutely no negotiations have been conducted with the United States." That denial sits at the center of the current standoff. It was not merely a procedural correction. It was an assertion that Iran does not want domestic or international audiences to believe it is seeking an off-ramp under pressure, especially while missile exchanges continue. Iranian messaging went further still, accusing Trump of using public claims of diplomacy to influence markets and shape perceptions of momentum. Another preserved line from the Iranian side reads, Iran's parliament speaker said these fake news reports are designed to manipulate the global financial and oil markets. That accusation aligns with broader Iranian rhetoric, suggesting that Washington is trying to cool oil prices, ease investor anxiety, and create the appearance of control while the battlefield remains volatile. State-linked Iranian media and military-linked commentary also suggested that Tehran believes time is on its side. According to Reuters reporting on statements carried by the Tasnim news agency, an Iranian military source said new surprises had been prepared for the coming days. That messaging was designed to rebut any impression that Iran had been weakened into serious concessions. Instead, the line from Tehran was that Trump was searching for a way out of a military and political stalemate rather than dictating terms from a position of strength. That posture was encapsulated in another key statement that merits preservation. An Iranian military source said Iran has planned new surprises for the coming days of the ongoing war, the implementation of which could produce very big results. The line is blunt, threatening, and intentionally open-ended. It suggests that Tehran wants opponents and markets alike to expect further escalation, possibly across more than one front. The rhetoric also reflected the economic dimension of the crisis. Reports from Reuters, AP, and the Washington Post say the conflict has already helped drive up oil prices and raise fears about the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical maritime choke points for energy shipments. In that context, Iran's warnings about the sky, the stock market, and the price of oil were not only rhetorical flourishes, they were strategic signals about where Tehran believes it can impose maximum pressure through military attacks, investor panic, and energy market disruption. Another of the most striking lines from the Iranian side should therefore stay exactly as spoken. An Iranian military source said, Trump should take his head off his phone and social media for a while, and from now on, his eyes should only be focused on the sky, the stock market, and the price of oil. The phrasing is theatrical, but the underlying message is strategic. Iran wants to project that it can impose costs simultaneously on the battlefield, in financial markets, and across global energy flows. For Israel, the latest strikes are a reminder that even with layered air defenses, no shield is perfect. Reuters recently reported that Iranian cluster-capable missiles create particular difficulties because interception must happen at the right phase of flight, and Israeli officials have acknowledged that some warheads will inevitably get through. The latest central Tel Aviv blast, combined with missile alerts in Jerusalem and damage east of the city, reinforces the sense that the conflict is settling into a dangerous rhythm: interception, impact, rescue, retaliation, and renewed threats of something worse to come. The overnight attacks also carry a psychological weight beyond the casualty figures. Tel Aviv is not merely Israel's economic center. It is a densely populated symbol of civilian life, commerce, nightlife, and normalcy. Striking it repeatedly sends a message to the Israeli public that ordinary urban routines can be broken at any hour. The temporary suspension of a Knesset session after alerts extends that message to the political class as well. Nowhere is assumed fully insulated, not even the institutions that symbolize state continuity. For Washington, the crisis is becoming a test of whether coercive diplomacy can survive in parallel with active regional war. Trump has presented himself as both willing to escalate and uniquely capable of negotiating an outcome. But Iran's denial of talks, combined with its warnings of further action, suggests that any pause in U.S. strikes may be interpreted in Tehran not as an opening for compromise, but as evidence that military pressure and economic shock are working. That is the risk built into Trump's five-day formula. If diplomacy does not materialize, the pause could come to look less like strategic patience and more like a public countdown to an even wider war. What happened overnight in Tel Aviv, therefore, matters on several levels at once. It was a military event because missiles got through and struck a major city. It was a civil defense story because emergency services contained what could have been a deadlier scene. It was a political event because the Knesset itself was disrupted by alerts. And it was a diplomatic event because the strikes unfolded at the exact moment Washington was claiming diplomacy might still be possible, and Tehran was insisting the opposite. By dawn, the physical scene in central Israel told one story: broken glass, scorched vehicles, damaged homes, and shaken residents emerging from shelters. But the wider regional picture told another. Neither side appears ready to step back, and the public messaging from all major actors now carries the cadence of escalation rather than compromise. The missiles that landed in and around Tel Aviv were not just aimed at streets and buildings. They were aimed at confidence, at deterrence, and at the fragile hope that the conflict might be approaching a limit. For now, that hope looks thin. Israel remains on high alert. Iran is promising more, and the United States is trying to keep one foot in deterrence and the other in diplomacy. Whether the next 5 days lead to talks, renewed strikes on Iranian infrastructure, or an even wider regional confrontation may depend less on what leaders say publicly than on what they decide behind closed doors. But overnight, the message delivered by the missiles over Tel Aviv was unmistakable. This war is still expanding, and every claim of restraint is being tested in real time.